Hi, what's poppin'? I'm Matt Young. Hey, what's going on? What's up? My name is Matt Young. You're watching Nothing Bad Ever Happens, and in this video, I would like to talk to you about morning pages. I mentioned morning pages in the first video I did about morning routines. The second thing I do is I write 3 pages in this journal. I got this practice from a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a really, really powerful book. It changed my life for the better. I strongly recommend you read it. Morning pages are just like a form of journaling where you wake up in the morning and one of the first things you do when you wake up is you write 3 pages of freehand writing. You could do like 3 pages on a pad or 3 pages in like a little notebook. I write 3 pages in this book, and the pages are about that big. It takes me 12 minutes. I've timed it. It takes me 12 minutes to write 3 of those pages if you're just not censoring yourself. That's the whole point. The whole point is to block out the voice in your head that tells you, hey, stop thinking that. You're not meant to think that. You're not meant to have that thought. That's something that you shouldn't express. Put that back in your head, you silly duffer. That's what it's about. It's about purging all of those thoughts that you think you're not meant to think, and it gets everything out on the page. You do not need to be a writer. It doesn't need to be good writing, because realistically speaking, no one will ever read it. No one should ever read it. Definitely no one other than yourself. Even you probably shouldn't read it for like months after you've written it. You should give it yourself a bit of leeway before you have another look at it. But it's really, really, really useful for just getting yourself into a good headspace for the day, because you empty out all the shite that you've got backed up in your head. Think of your brain as like a series of interconnecting pipes, and some of those thoughts sometimes get lodged in the pipes and you can't bloody well get them out, can you? You're not a licensed plumber. You don't know how to do that. How do you get them out? You write them down. You get them out of your head and onto the page, and suddenly they're someone else's to deal with. You send out these messages to the ether, and eventually you'll get something back. Think of it as like transmitting. They're really useful for recognizing patterns in your life. You might not notice the thinking patterns you get into because you think them all the time and you're always in your own head, so you don't really bother to acknowledge what the heck is going on up there. But if you start writing stuff down and actually making a note of it, you realize you start to sort of learn stuff. Remember like taking notes in high school? I don't. If you remember taking notes in high school after writing it out, you would remember it better. And that's exactly the case. If you write stuff out, you'll start to remember it more, start to notice the things that keep on occurring in your life, the repetitive symbols or images, thought patterns or problems that you're facing or things that you're excited for. You'll start to notice them occurring more and more. And if you write every single day 3 pages about the same problem, it'll take like a week for you to realize that something's got to give. It's a keystone habit. Keystone habits are like those habits that when you change one little thing, suddenly a lot of other things ripple into place. You start exercising a little bit more, you go for a walk around the block every night, suddenly you notice that you're not smoking as much and you're eating healthier and you chat to more people at work. It's one of those things, and it's a really, really huge one of those, because you start to acknowledge all the things you do. You write stuff that you liked about your day yesterday, stuff you didn't like about your day yesterday. So you gradually start trying to do more of that stuff you like, do less of that stuff you didn't like. You learn to know yourself better. The more you write about it, the more you start to engage directly with your life and start to acknowledge it as you're not just a passenger floating along on this, lifespan. You're actually the master of your own fate. You are literally the author of your own destiny. You do not have to be a good writer. You do not have to be interested in writing. You do not have to be a good speller or have nice handwriting. I dare you to read any of that. I only just learned how to hold a pen properly this year. But I still, every single day, write that stuff down, because even if you can't read it later on, it'll still mean something to you and it will lodge in your head. If you are gonna do one thing every day that is gonna change your life, I promise you, this is it. If you don't want to write 3 pages, start with 1. Just keep a pad next to your bed. When you wake up, slap that alarm clock, roll over, just write 1 page. Maybe you'll write about your dreams. At the least, you'll start having a dream journal, and then you'll start looking at those things and start working out what the fuck is going on when you're dreaming. That's fun too. It's just as fun to work out what's going on when you're asleep as it is when you're awake. There's so much introspection to be done, dude. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in your noggin that you just don't know about. And once you start looking at it, you start looking at everything differently. And that's when life gets real exciting, in my opinion. I think it's great. I don't know. I can't recommend it enough. I cannot recommend it enough. The more you do it, the more you learn to block out the censor that tells you don't write that, write something else. When I first started doing them, I wrote morning pages for so long, and I always operated under the false notion that maybe someone would maybe read them. I used code words and stuff for like people's names, or certain things I got up to, and I would be a little bit deceptive just in case anyone ever read it. But the more you realize that no one is going to read it, it's just for you, you're just doing this for you, it's so much better. You start to just feel freer and happy to just account everything that means anything to you. I've got to do the dishes today. I've got to do laundry. Jenny at work looked at me weird yesterday. I don't know how to catch a tram. I've never been to Belize. The amount of stuff you come out with that just occurs to you that you don't realize how much thinking you're doing until you start doing it unfiltered through a pen. You don't need an English degree. You don't even need a high school education. All you need is thoughts in your head and a pen in your hand. It's great. Try some morning pages. Just try one, even one. Just try and do it a couple of days in a row and just see if you notice any difference. It's worth it, I promise. It takes about 10 minutes. It's great. It's cringe-worthy looking back at some of it. If you read them back, eventually you'll realize that maybe there is a lot of bad stuff in there, but the more bad stuff you write, the more bad stuff you realize you should cut out. The more good stuff you write, the more good stuff you start to notice. And eventually, you will come to a point at which nothing bad ever happens. I'm going to do another video sometime about just the power of writing and the power of reading in general and the power of language, because that really excites me. I think it's super important when it comes to emotional self-regulation. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope it's been in some way interesting or helpful. I hope that you try the practice out and see how it goes for you, and I hope it goes really well for you, and I hope it feels uncomfortable at first, but you push through it and you realize that it's worth it and it's cool. All of this stuff is just different kinds of workouts for your brain, workouts for your mind. It's exactly the same as exercising your body. It sucks at first, but then you get in the swing and you start to see results and you get really, really happy with yourself. So give it a try. My name is Matt Young. You have been watching Nothing Bad Ever Happens. Thank you so much.
I got my city doing front flips. When every father may a rapper jump ship. I guess that's why they call it where I stay. Clean up the streets so my daughter can have somewhere to play.